I spent $50,000 on a $4,200 truck with one goal in mind, to make 1,000 horsepower. So today in this video, I'm gonna be walking you through everything it took to make 1,000 horsepower on this truck. I will also be breaking down how much everything costs down to the penny, how I afford this amazing build, and exactly what all I installed. We are going to start out with the big mods first. So like every high horsepower build, you have to start out with a good foundation. That's why we put a built JNK engine in this truck. This JNK engine is a stage 3 plus 6.0 Powerstroke long block. It has Wagler billet connecting rods with ARP hardware, a coated HD piston set, ARP 625 head studs, a stage 2 camshaft, high rev valve springs, billet valve bridges, O-ring cylinder heads, bored 30 over block, billet chromely push rods, balanced rotating assembly, coated main rod and cam bearings, and a JNK billet black oxidized coated flex plate. I believe that's how you say it. There were some extra add-ons that we added onto this build, but for the total exact cost for this entire built engine, it was around $15,943.46. Now that we got a good foundation with the engine, we need to tackle the driveline next. That's why we went with a built competition transmission from Warren Diesel Shop. This transmission should be able to transfer all that 1,000 horsepower that we're making from the engine to the ground. This transmission came out to $7,824. So now that we had a good foundation, we got our driveline set up, we've got our built JNK engine, it was time to add some of the real power. That's why we went with some 430-150 Warren Diesel injectors. These injectors came out to $3,250, and it's definitely one of the biggest contributions to making our 1,000 horsepower that we were able to make with this truck. Now with the bigger injectors, you're going to need more oil and fuel to supply the bigger injectors. So that is why we went with a Thumper 2 H-pop and a dual high pressure oil pump kit, as well as some one-piece driftless diesel standpipes. This allowed us to make so much more ICP over the factory pump. Now the problem we were facing after adding these two pumps was the OEM IPR and the ICP sensor will only allow for 4,000 ICP. However, we needed to make 6,000 ICP. So that is why we put a Warren Diesel IPR and an ICP sensor in it. This IPR will allow for 6,000 ICP over the factory one, which will only read and provide 4,000 ICP. In my personal experience with those two sensors, that really was the key factor into getting us from that 800 horsepower range to the 1,039 horsepower range. You got to have the IPR and the ICP sensor if you're trying to make higher horsepower. All of these mods with the ICP, the IPR, the dual high pressure oil pump, the Thumper 2 H-pop, and the one-piece standpipes, they came out to $3,453. So now that oil was taken care of, we needed to add more fuel. That is why we installed a Fass fuel system. For this exact kit, we put a 240 GPH or gallon per hour Fass fuel system on this truck. This will provide plenty of fuel to our injectors. This Fass fuel system costed $977.89. Now with the more fuel supplied, we needed to regulate that fuel properly, so that's why we installed a regulated return. This exact return came out to $500. Now that the fuel was taken care of, the oil was taken care of, the foundation was taken care of, we needed to add a couple more accessories around the engine so that way it lasts as long as it possibly can. That's why we got a brand new front timing cover, a billet Warren Diesel injection low pressure oil pump, a brand new KC Turbos water pump, and also all new gaskets and fluids, and a brand new oil pan. All of this came out to $2,128.68. Now that oil was taken care of, fuel is taken care of, the accessories around the engine are taken care of, and the foundation, the engine, and the drive line is taken care of, it was time to start adding the air. Our first mod for the air was these BD manifolds over here. So y'all can see, these are the BD exhaust manifolds. It is a lot bigger than the factory exhaust manifold, and it allows for 16 to 25% more airflow. These exact exhaust manifolds costed $687.95. Our next air mod to pair up with the exhaust manifold was this O-Dogs intake manifold. This intake manifold right here allows for 46% more airflow over the restrictive factory intake manifold and is completely hollow. This exact mod costed $950. Now that we've got the O-Dog intake manifold, the BD exhaust manifolds, we needed to hold all the boost that we were about to create. That's why we installed a KC Turbos intercooler. This will hold up to 120 pounds of boost. This exact mod is a much better option over the factory intercooler because it doesn't have any of the plastic intake parts here where the normal factory 6.0 intercooler would usually fail. That's why we installed this one. It fit amazing and was only $750. So to hold all that boost, to pair up with the intercooler, and to pair up with all of our performance mods, we went with some riff-raff boots and clamps and some brand new KC Turbos intercooler pipes. This is going to be able to hold all that boost that we're going to throw at it, and it won't blast the boot off like it was doing with the older, cheaper clamps. These exact boots and clamps came out to $475. Now that we got majority of the accessory air mods done. That was a key component to making higher horsepower numbers because everything comes together to make one happy family. And it was time to do some of the big air mods, which is going to be this O-Dog compound turbo kit. This is the S480 turbo that feeds our stage 3 KC turbo in the valleys. It is basically an S480 over a stage 3. Now we are still working on this pipe right here because it does hit the hood, and as you guys can see, we did have to cut out some of the hood. However, though, the overall kit fit great, it runs great, and it was one of the main reasons we were able to make so much horsepower. I also really like these exhaust pipes here from the kit. It does just all around look amazing, and the airflow is crazy. The main problem with this kit is it is a pretty freaking penny. This exact kit came out to $7,330 for this whole entire kit. That includes the stage 3 turbo in the valley, the S480 out here, all the piping. Really expensive freaking kit, but it's definitely worth it for the amount of horsepower we were able to gain. We were pushing around 65 to 75 pounds of boost on the dyno. Absolutely insane how everything held up the way it did. You can imagine with that much boost, you're gonna need to read all that boost. That is why we installed a 6.4 map sensor and a 6.4 EBP sensor. These two sensors were key to utilizing all that boost and able to read all that boost so we could control it. When you're making higher horsepower numbers, you really want to try to take the guessing game out of it. That's why you try to add all these sensors like the IPR, the ICP, the map sensor, the EBP sensor, and all these other sensors to read the higher ICP and the higher boost that you're making, so that way you can control everything that's going on. These two sensors came out to $106.95, so really cheap for these two sensors. So now that we had more air, we got more fuel, we got basically everything, I needed to throw a exhaust system in it. So it already comes with a downpipe, O-Dog's kit does. So we just went ahead and finished it off down there and did a 5-inch downpipe back. Came out to around that $500 range. And then I also got a SET tuner device to monitor all my temps and everything like that we were doing on the dyno, and also put the spicy tuning that we were on the dyno. That exact stuff came out to $875 for both of them. And that would be the exhaust and the SET device. Since the dual high pressure oil pump will not work with the fan clutch, we had to install some electric fans. That's why we got these electric fans right here. I was able to secure these at KC. Charlie was generous enough to just have these on hand, so I was able to get them from him. But if you were to buy these, they'd be around $500 to $600. So I went ahead and just put $575 for the fans. With this part of the video, that will basically conclude all the performance mods done to the truck. That basically is everything that we were able to do to make the higher horsepower numbers. Now we got to get this truck race ready. We got to get the truck track ready. We've already made the horsepower. We've already put it down to the dyno. Now it's time to put it down to the ground. That is why we got a set of Hoosier race tires and a set of Vision wheels. They're actually inside the shop right now. This set of tires and wheels was a key contribution to hooking up on the track, and they're super freaking light. So they're a lot lighter than my factory wheels, which will contribute to either higher horsepower numbers on the dyno and also a better track time because you're turning a lot less weight. Taking your weight and moving it around to where you can get the better traction, and basically taking into account the weight versus traction ratio. That is what we got here. I've got a fuel cell from Jegs, I believe. They sent us the wrong fuel fittings, or they've sent us the wrong fittings, which already kind of messed us up, but we were able to get it all taken care of. The guys at the track were really helpful, and they had a bunch of fittings. So we were able to get that all installed. But this is a 12-gallon fuel cell. We located it more in the back so we could move some of that weight to the back, and we could hook up a lot better on the track. So that was a big contribution to us hooking up, as well as a drive loop for the drive line, because we needed to add a safety feature in there just in case our drive shaft exploded, it'll catch it. You have to have the drive loop on there in order to race. So that was a necessity to race in the 770 class, which is what we got. So for the cost of the wheels and the tires, it came out to $2,701.92. And then the cost for the 12-gallon fuel cell and the drive loop, it was $377.39. To avoid some of the wheel hop we were having on the street, we went with some Bilstein 5100 shocks. Our old shocks were completely shot. You could just close them with your two hands, and it was making a bunch of bad noises on the road. So we went with some Bilstein 5100 shocks and installed those on there. These Bilstein 5100 shocks came out to $464. Now, y'all have been edging all video to see how much it actually costed. So here's the climax. Here is the total cost of the entire thing, basically everything. The compound turbo kit, the injectors, the built bottom end, the built transmission, the drive loop, the fuel cell, everything race ready, making 1,000 horsepower on the dyno. I got the sheet here. Let's see how much it costed me to build a 1,039 horsepower 6.0 Powerstroke, a 7.16 second 8th mile, and a 2.9 second 0 to 60. It costed, drumroll, $51,108.24 for just the parts. Or that's including gaskets and fluids and all that extra miscellaneous stuff. stuff, and also shipping and everything. That's just for the parts. And that's not including the race seat and all the dash interior and stuff like that we already have for the truck, which came out to like another $2,000. So $51,000 spent to do all of this on the 6-liter. You have to kind of take in how much opportunity cost it would have costed you to do this to another type of diesels. For me, I just love the 6-liter Powerstroke. Tons of money spent. Now, not including labor as well. So if you wanted to do labor as well, if you wanted to take it to a shop and get all this done, you're gonna be spending easily $65,000 to $75,000 to do all this. So definitely depends on your budget. If you got a pretty freaking penny, that's about how much it's gonna cost, and that's about how much it costed me. Now for the big question, a lot of you guys are probably wondering, how do I afford this? How do I afford to pay for 1,000 horsepower trucks as well as pay for all of my other mods on all of my other trucks, because I own 7 diesel trucks? And the simple answer to that question is sponsors and my automotive shop here, as well as YouTube ad revenue. I've been doing YouTube for 6 years now, and it's not been an easy grind. It's definitely been a harder grind. And for the first 3 years of YouTube, I didn't make a single penny. I had to mow lawns on the side to come up with enough money to put the mods into the truck. And I spent every single penny I made from my mowing lawns and from any other miscellaneous stuff I did, and I put it right back into the YouTube channel, bought better camera equipment, bought better mods for my truck, stuff like that. I started out with a 7.3 Powerstroke, and I put all my money back into mods for the truck. That's kind of how I started out, and that's how I kind of grew the channel. After the first 3 years, I was able to get monetized on YouTube. I didn't make a single penny. I was literally living on ramen noodles, basically. Y'all guys obviously know what happened to my OG 7.3. I totaled it after making a little bit of horsepower, and I was able to put the money I got from that truck into a 6.7 Powerstroke. I got a 6.7 Powerstroke right there, and then I bought that one. I put a KC turbo on it and a couple other things, which I am very grateful for KC turbos. They've been a huge help for me on my journey. I buy a ton of parts from them as well. We've done about 150 KC turbos here at my shop, installed as well as shipping to customers. And I've also got a KC turbo on my 6.4, and all my other trucks have KC turbos. I did not get my first sponsor. My very first sponsor, I believe, was Full Force Diesel or something like that, back when I had 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. I was pretty small, and I had to hit up like 30, 40 people to get my first sponsorship, because I couldn't afford injectors. Injectors for the 7.3 were like $1,400, $1,400. I was only kind of doing small mods like cold air intake, mirrors, cosmetic stuff, other stuff like that, to what I could actually afford. Anything under $500 I could afford at the time. I grew my audience up to 8,000 subscribers, just mainly posting stuff that I thought was cool on YouTube, and then I started to make it really cool. I was able to get sponsors, and then after the sponsors, I was able to put better and better and bigger and bigger and bigger and performance mods in the truck. And then after the 7.3 was totaled, we bought this 6-liter. This one I was able to basically get fully sponsored. A lot of this stuff is sponsored. Now I don't really do sponsors as much. We mainly just use the shop to sponsor majority of my builds. However, for this truck, it was very heavily sponsored, I guess I could say. The price I gave you earlier was what the retail price would be for a lot of this stuff, and I didn't necessarily pay that much for all of this stuff. Even after the first 3 years of YouTube, it seemed quite literally impossible to ever make this a dream, ever make this a reality. And I was told multiple times that it's never work out, never work out, never work out. And I just kept pushing through it. I kept posting videos, I kept posting videos, I kept posting videos. And now we've got a 5,000 square foot shop. I had 7 diesel trucks. We just did a crazy 1,000 horsepower build, and it's just exponentialized over the last year. It's crazy to see how far I've come from literally my garage and my 7.3 that I first had. And it's been a crazy, crazy reality for me. Right now, we've got a lot going on in the shop, and we do a lot of stuff here. So I'm not trying to make it a sob story or try to hype you up or anything, but I am trying to hype you up a little bit. If you are looking to start a YouTube channel or a shop, and just get after it. But at the end of the day, if you are looking to pitch sponsors, because I get a lot of DMs about that, of people either pitching me, trying to get a sponsorship with 50 followers, or they try to pitch me with 2,000 followers. The main thing, if you have a low follower number, you have to offer the sponsor more value than what the sponsor is giving you. If you have higher followers, it's a lot easier to get a sponsor versus low followers. That being said, how I pitch sponsors is I usually start off with validation. So I try to validate myself in the first 5 seconds of the email, and then in the next sentence or next 2 sentences or next 20 seconds of the email, I try to offer value. So validation is going to be I'm the owner, or I'm somebody who has a lot of followers, and then in the next sentences, I'm gonna put exactly how many followers I have and exactly how many views I get. In the next sentence, I'm gonna put how many sales the company can expect to get, and how many followers the company can expect to get, and how many views the company can expect to get from my stuff. You have to offer so much value that it doesn't even make sense to not not sponsor you. That's kind of how I was able to get all this. I've pitched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sponsors, possibly even thousands at this point, and that's how I was able to get majority of my stuff here. And once you start getting on the big sponsor list for a lot of these companies, they will eventually just start sending you stuff. I buy hundreds of KC turbos a year, so it makes for a ton of sense for KC turbos to send me one if I'm already buying hundreds of them from them a year. Now, once you've got your validation, you've got how many views a company can expect, then you want to sell it. You want to ask for the free product, or you want to ask for the service that you want or from them, or ask for the part that you're looking for free, basically. So that's kind of how I structure my emails, and I've had a pretty good success rate on them. And I use a lot of the shop revenue to cover like employees, like the person you're seeing behind the camera right now, and the editor that is actually currently editing this video. So I use that revenue to cover employees, and I mainly use sponsorship and the YouTube revenue to cover parts. So that's kind of how I structure my revenue coming in, and that's basically how you build how I built the 6.0 Powerstroke to 1,000 horsepower. If you guys want to get any of these parts, you guys can on pscrepair.com. Every single little bolt piece, up pipe, turbo, everything is on pscrepair.com, so you guys can get it all there if you want to build a 1,000 horsepower 6-liter. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.